So what we're going to be looking at is location services of these sort of things, smart devices, smart phones, smart cameras, things like that which have Wi-Fi and so on attached to them. And we're going to look at different aspects of how accurate or otherwise are location services. So the forensics students are going to look at it across their two modules this semester from the perspective, effectively, of can I prove or disprove the fact that I was or was not present at a particular point in the sort of formal court of law type of process, because I have evidence that these are staggeringly inaccurate at times. I've got evidence on there of some photos where I know very, very, very precisely to within 2 or 3 meters of where I was. And I've got photos on here which are tagged 20 kilometers out of place. I've got some photos which are not tagged with any geolocation at all, when they should have done. I've got 5 photos, 2 from literally from a spot like that. 1 spot where I didn't move from. I took 5 photos over a period of about an hour. 2 untagged, 2 tagged roughly within a reasonable location from there. 1 11.5 kilometers wrong and another 22.5 kilometers wrong. I got 5 up in Yorkshire where there was perfect visibility. It could see all of the satellites you could ever imagine. It could also probably pick up 2 or 3 different cells of a phone. And the best accuracy was 150 meters, the worst was 550 meters.
Is it not based on your settings, though?
I don't give a darn what the cause is. You see, forensics, it's a consequences, because people are being sent to jail because of what is or is not recorded about their location using that, whether it's cell records or whether it's their phone records. We in IT are thinking about using these sort of gadgets to add value to businesses, or at least not to damage businesses. Whereas the networks and securities guys, they are doing a wireless module, advanced wireless technology or something, and they can get inside here. So they'll be looking at what is causing the error. We're looking at how big is the error, how much of our data can we trust, and in what circumstances can we trust it. So that for us, essentially the business use, the analytics side of it, how bad are the errors, are the ways we can detect them and get rid of those erroneous items of data. That's what we are doing in this group. Now, there's an interesting thing, is to walk down from the end of the corridor there, wireless connected, until you fall out of the building at the other end when you switch into 3G, 4G. Look at yourself where it says you are, because if I walk down this side of the building, it tracks me reasonably well. On one occasion, at least on the other side of the building, on the other corridor, it located me right bang in the middle of the building for the whole of the journey down there. Then when I got out of the building, at the speed of light, literally, I suddenly ended up from the end of the building at the far corner of the car park. And then watching it, it sort of wandered around like that, and eventually ended up back at the front of the staircase or the outside of it. Is that important or not important? Depends what you want to do with the data. If you put, say, I don't know, Apple Maps, Google Maps, and the Microsoft Bing Maps or whatever it is onto one of your smart devices, and then at different times of the day compare the crowdsourced information about traffic. Are they identical or are they different? And at different times of the day you'll find that London Road, which is not functional at the moment due to the fact that the London Road Bridge is sort of being rebuilt. There's no real traffic on it. Or if there is, it's flowing quite nicely, except that most afternoons your traffic warning on these will tell you that the London Road is red. Blocked traffic, not moving. Well, no, that's right. There are a dozen people parked on it who aren't moving, and there's lots of people going up and down the road. So is crowdsourcing of data like this terribly valuable? Under what circumstances is it different? Because of course Apple are using their iPhones crowdsourcing to collect the traffic data. Microsoft are using their Microsoft Windows type machine phones, and Google are using Android to collect crowdsourced information. So that's the sort of area that this project is. I've written it in a way that everybody can actually contribute if they want to. They've got to find a focus that's their own. And so no doubt may well be people in forensics or networks who want to do it from a technical perspective, and they can be supervised by appropriate tutors. So I'm giving you this really early so you can have a look and see if it's interesting to you guys, and then I will take up to about, well, between 6, 8, maybe 10 people, just depends, see how many. But that'll give you a feel for the sort of project. And that's a sort of theme across those 3 programs. We're going to be looking at different aspects of the location services problem. Now, what I'm going to be doing overall for this semester is normally about the first half hour of our 2-hour period. And I think next week we'll actually go back to having 2 groups, morning and afternoon. I'll let you know how that goes because it's a bit cramped. And you'll get a better experience if there's 12 of you per session rather than 23, and it's kind of a bit stuck. So we'll go back to 2 groups next week. And that gives us a bit of growing space as well if we get any more people coming. But what I want to be able to do is about half an hour each week we will be looking at a particular topic area, and we're just about to start this week 1, the introduction to the module, and I will kind of lead you through a context, some ideas, some thoughts, some questions, and then the other hour and a half roughly is you sort of researching in you're individually, developing your working bibliographies, discussing with each other in small groups, and then every now and then we'll have a sort of general group discussion to consolidate what you've all learned, because hey, there's 12 of you in a group, or 23 today, and 23 brains working on the problem gives you 23 perspectives and a lot of sources of information. And then in the second half of the session, which is the so-called workshop session, that's when you'll be actually applying your new ideas that you've researched in that first half of the first hour. Then the second hour, you're then beginning to apply those ideas in various different directions. Mostly, as probably from next week, you'll be looking at developing those ideas into your assignment. So you will start researching and beginning to plan your assignment from next week onwards. And I will spend quite a lot of that time, that second hour, working with you individually, bouncing ideas off you, you'll be bouncing ideas off me, and we'll basically be trying to get the very, very best ideas that will lead you to the very best grade. Now, one of the things that a few of you who were here last year will know is that the grades that people get on on my modules are very, very high. They're around about 15 to 20% higher than most other modules. I expect to get about 60 to 70% of you will get first class honours, i.e. 70% or above. And the way I've done it is such that the external examiner is happy that they are appropriate. There is no pressure to scale them back so that they have a centre point on 65%. Mine modules, this module last year, the centre point, the median or mean, was around about 75 to 80%. And one of the ways that's going to happen is, and this is a warning for for you for the future of this module, is that you will need to get back in here. Oh, where's it gone to? Oh, it's got that silly thing working as well as the track. Now, you will be writing your assignment between now and week 11. During the 4 hours on the Monday of week 11, I will issue a schedule, and you will each come to me having already submitted your final draft, the best work you can do just before week 11, Monday week 11. And you will then come to me with your work on the memory stick, although you will put it and turn it in so that it's there and similarity checked and all that sort of thing, and I can then annotate it with comments and to help you improve it. You will then, having got that information about how to improve it, which might be about formatting or about the ideas, the analysis, the synthesis, you will then have until the 3rd Friday evening of the 3rd of January, by 4 weeks, to improve it and incorporate all of the improvements I've suggested. And then you will come to see me on the 6th of January, which is this week of exams. You'll come to my office again with your final version, and I will again mark it in front of you, with you there, so you get instant feedback, instant mark, subject obviously to moderation, but it shouldn't change. So I will expect to see you in my office on the 6th or the 7th or the 8th of January. With all the, and you will have submitted it finally to turn it in on the Friday before that. That is, and I found that last term I did actually did some research comparing the final draft mark to the actual final submitted, and for enterprise systems it was a 15% improvement, and for information security and assurance it was an 18% improvement over that period. So you play ball, you'll do well. That's the real message. And if you actually want to find see a presentation, I went to Toronto in May, and if you go to this the publications, go to the computing YouTube channel, Inspiring Delivering Outstanding Experience. That is a 15-20 minute keynote address I gave to an educational conference about that experience, about that improvement that comes, and how I deliver that improvement to you guys. And you'll see some of the statistics there. And if you go to my own homepage, down to the bottom here, you'll get the actual presentation itself with so you can read it, and at that link, which goes into that YouTube channel, you'll get the video of what it was. And that'll help you to begin to understand, some of the things that I'm trying to do, why I'm trying to do it, and the effect it has on the sort of things that you can actually achieve. Wait a minute. Yeah. You'll want to get a copy of that paper there. It's a conference paper I gave about two years ago, again over in Toronto, about sustainable information corporate governance. And there are some interesting thoughts there that you may want to include in order to understand the topic of this module. In many of the sections you'll see two little full items, seminar and the workshop, and they'll give you some ideas about what we're trying to do during the two sections of our sessions. For those of you who are new, that link to Plato is where, I think it works anyway with a bit of luck, that's where you can find out and practice or refresh your memory about Harvard-style citing and referencing, because you're going to be using that for all of your writing this semester and next semester. So let's start off at the top end.
Just close it with the
Yeah, that's right. It's a bit new. So, what is this module all about? Well, like I said earlier on, failures of governance both in the corporate world and in the world of information governance, information technology governance, we actually destroy a staggering amount of wealth in the use of IT. We know that something like, well, 30-odd% of all IT-related projects fail catastrophically and do not deliver anything. We know that from the Standish Group reports that something like 30 to 35% of projects deliver on time, to budget, and what was contracted for, and the remaining sort of 40-odd% in Standish Group terms are challenged. They run late, over budget, and deliver very little of what was actually intended. Depending how you add up the numbers, what you include in the costs, the failures caused by IT or the loss of value caused by IT can be anything from about 500 billion to something like $6 trillion US a year. Out of a GDP for the world, total gross domestic product of the world is 63 billion. So it could be destroying 10% of the wealth created allegedly every year. It's somewhere between $500 billion and $1 trillion. I mean, you think about what happened last year in the security failures. Target and a range of other companies. Sony and other hackers. You know, some people, or a range of different websites and companies managed to lose something like 500 million login IDs last year, and other such personal ID. Yeah, 500 million. That's 1/12 of the whole world, including babies and children. And many of the challenge projects in the Standish Group terms only deliver 40% of the contracted for functionality or less. That means that people have to do jobs the long way round, the hard way, not the allegedly quick way that IT is supposed to help us with. So if you build those on costs of other ways of doing things, the more difficult ways, the more difficult challenges of getting the job done, it's not difficult to come up with that 6 trillion, but it's probably a bit high. It's somewhere between the $500 billion and $1 trillion, I reckon. And so what we are looking at in this module, the Sustainable Information Corporate Governance module, is actually how do we understand what's causing these failures and this destruction of value, and what can we do to find ways that can deliver some degree of actual positive success, net of the costs, net of the problems. And that's what we're really trying to come up with, is a way of understanding the sort of questions which will lead us towards some reasonably good answers. So we need to think a little bit about a couple of terms in the module title. What do we mean by sustainable or sustainability, and what do we mean by governance? We also need to think about what is the real role of informatics, the science, supposedly, of using computing technology, we need to think about the impact of all of these wizzo technologies that are coming around us. We need to think from a Standish Group perspective, you know, what are the risks, what are the costs in the broadest possible way. And then out of all of that, what you guys are going to learn how to do and will put into practice in your assignment is you will actually create the outline of a sustainable corporate governance strategy for a type of business or company or whatever. So you'll learn how to ask the right questions. I'll give you pointers week by week to the various frameworks, the various theories that lead you to some interesting questions. So that you can then find out what's going on, and using some of those frameworks come up with some good ideas about how we actually solve the problems. Oh, bother. Slightly out of date. What we're doing this year is 1 hour and 1 hour, 1 hour seminar, 1 hour workshop. It's interesting, when I first started this program, or these modules, I was absolutely determined I was going to have 4 hours per group. What I discovered last year is that cutting the direct time, but being very careful how I use it, I get the same results. You get the same results with a 1 hour and 1 hour. Because you go off and do more work by yourselves. And then you actually are much more productive when you come back in here for the workshop or the seminar next week. Because you've already done a lot of the thinking. So you'll be given a broad context. I'm just finishing writing it up. So a broad context about this location services game, and you can then think of, you'll have to do some research to find out how it works, what it is, where the various interesting questions are, who's using it for what purpose, and then you'll home in on an area that you think is really interesting to you, because that's what really helps also to get good assignments, is that you like the topic. If I were to give you all the same topic and force you to all look at exactly the same thing, you know, it's, oh, that's Richard Self's assignment, and I'm not terribly interested. It doesn't actually connect with me. But what I want you to do is to actually look at it, research it, and find the topic area that really, really, really connects with your thinking, or your interests, or those of you who have already got some business experience, you know, maybe it links to that. And then you'll do a lot of researching, and week by week you'll move through the various aspects and apply those into your writing, or your planning at least, until we end up with a really great assignment. And this is the structure of what we're going to be doing. This is what we'll do in the first hour. This is what we do, or you do, in the second hour. And you can see it on there. And so we look first of all at what it's about, what's a sustainable organisation, and we'll look at some measures of sustainability, and it will be extremely different from anything you've ever seen before, and you will probably feel that you're going to struggle from about now onwards. And that's perfectly natural, because we're doing something that some of you have never done before. You're doing research-based learning. And you'll be looking at documentation which you will never have come across ever before, in a completely different context from anything you've ever come across before. And so you'll think, oops, not quite sure how this DGSI stuff, which you'll see in a minute, has any application. I don't understand business. But as you read it and look at that documentation, think about how to look at a big document which is lots of pages. How do I easily and quickly work out what's going on there? What does it connect to? That's what we're doing this week. Next week, consequences of failures of governance. We'll then look a little bit on in the third week at what is it that actually corporate governance is all about, UK particularly, the UK Principle of Corporate Governance, and then how that applies in the following week to information governance itself, the principles, the evidence, and then some of the frameworks, like ISO 27002. Like there's COBIT, ITIL, and. Now, week 6 is about some principles and making sustainable computing work. You will be doing that basically as a reading week, because I will be over in Las Vegas as a co-chair of an educational conference there. Some of you knew I was in Vegas last year, and I'm going to the same one this year. So you'll have to sort of sort that one out yourself, but I'll pick it up in week 7 when I come back, because we'll merge that in with risk management issues. We'll be looking at project management. Why is it that project management doesn't work very well? Why is it that Standish Group show so many failed projects and so many that run over time? And we'll look at business continuity, ethics, and then week 11, that's when you have your final draft review session. So by that point, you should have effectively completed your assignment. I'll then look at it with you. They're about 12 minutes each, full marking of it. And then you'll have that 4-week period to improve it. And then week 12, the module review, well, we'll possibly actually look at a couple of rather intriguing videos from about 3 years ago, which are an interesting and very, very different way of looking at IT and why it causes some of the biggest problems in the world. One of them actually looks at how a particular way of thinking by a kind of a philosopher called Ayn Rand led to the credit crunch in 2007, 2008, 2009. That's a sort of outline of what we're going to be doing. There are some links here to websites where you can subscribe and get a weekly or a daily feed of interesting ideas. And just a reminder to those from last year or the year before, and those for the who are new, these are a range of quite credible professional sources of information. Now these are interesting because they are today's happenings, today's impact, today's consequences. Whereas if you go into the academic journals, it takes you 2 years to do the research and review and write your paper, and it can take a year or 2 for it to get published. So anything that's published in this week's or this month's issue of whatever journal, international journal of something, is likely to be 2, 3, 4 years out of date. These are today and yesterday and the day before, and they are relatively credible. So they're suitable for citing and referencing. And then there's a whole lot more. Bruce Schneier, this one's a brilliant one. Yeah, there's a whole lot. So there's a whole lot of links here that I've given you that are interesting. So, first action for today. And I'm going to switch off the video now because we're now getting into this sort of workshop-y sort of side. I want you to look at the question of what is sustainability? And I want you to look for both popular type of definitions, and for this one session alone, you can use Wikipedia as a source. You will not, repeat, not ever cite wiki anything in your writing. You can use Wikipedia, for example, to find out a bit of an overview of what it is and get some links to stuff, but not for citing more. But popular definitions, and then have a look for some of the more academic definitions of what sustainability is. Spend about 5–10 minutes trying to find different sources. Try not to get the same source as each other. Try and find a range of them, and then in 2 or 3 of you, whether back to back or sideways, have little discussions. What's good about those definitions? What's bad about them? how can you bring them together? What's it really actually mean? So in about 10, 15 minutes, we'll have a discussion across the group, the whole group, about what we find out from there, folks. Okay?